everyone, my name is Timothy Joseph Dagao and I'm going to present about Indonesia's chemical industry. The first industry that I'm going to talk about is Indonesia's pharmaceuticals industry. As issued in Indonesia's presidential regulation in 2015, it is identified as mainstay industry, which means it is a priority industry as the prime mover of future economy, while World Health Organization identifies it as formulation industry, which means Indonesia heavily relies on imports of raw materials and active ingredients to produce the final products. And in Indonesia, 74% is local industry, 90% is imports of raw materials and active ingredients, but has 27% of ASEAN pharmaceutical market share and have market valuations of $10 billion. Indonesia is currently the first in ASEAN and 19th in the world of largest pharmaceutical industry. And the GDP contribution in the first quarter of 2020, pharmaceuticals contribute $4.88 billion, and that actually increased to $5.3 billion in the second quarter, despite Indonesia's overall GDP decreased substantially. And the main product this year is face mask, hand sanitizer, personal protective equipment, herbal medicines, and also ventilator and even air purifying systems. And the average GDP contribution of 2019-2020 is $4.6 billion, or about 2% of Indonesia's GDP. In the employment and companies, Indonesia's pharmaceuticals currently employed 6.96 million people, which is about 37.7% of Indonesian industrial workforce, or 3.5% of Indonesia's productive workforce. And the average salary is $1,120 per month. Salary range varies from $340 to $4,210 per month. And the giant domestic companies in Indonesia is Kalbe Pharma and Sanbe Pharma. While you can see in the domestic pharmaceutical market share that MNC multinational companies dominates it, while Kalbe Pharma only have 12%. And the second industry that I'm going to talk about is Indonesia's agrochemicals industry. Now, Indonesia is dubbed on having reliance on agrarian economy. And now agrochemicals developed, it as identified as upstream industry, which means it is a priority industry served as the base of manufacturing to produce raw materials. And since 2015, Indonesia has made partnership with Food and Agriculture Organization for Partnership for Development Framework with funds of $349.83 million to solve the climate change resilience, sustainable intensification crop production, efficient agrochemical usage and distribution, and improvement of policy and partnerships. Indonesia currently has the 24% of ASEAN crop protection chemical sales and market valuations of $1.18 billion. Indonesia is currently the 27th largest agrochemicals industry. And now, in the GDP contribution in the first quarter, agrochemicals contribute $25 billion and the second quarter increased to $29.7 billion. And the production this year is fertilizers with about 3.1 million tons of production. And the average GDP contribution of 2019-2020 is $26 billion, about 9.8% of Indonesia's GDP. And now in the trade and products, one of the most important trade is Dalton Chemicals Indonesia, partnership with the South American Argentinian agrochemicals industry, and mainly to establish factories, increase production of herbicide, pesticide, insecticide, and other products. Indonesia has made a plan for future partnership. This is with Brazil, Paraguay, and Uruguay. And we can see here in the Indonesian's protection chemical market size by product is that Indonesia is currently at $950.8 million and is projected to increase to about $1,200 million by 2025. And this is one of the examples of Indonesia's product of pesticide. And now in the employment and companies, currently agrochemicals employed about 49 million people, about 41% of Indonesia's productive workforce, and mainly companies of agrochemicals in Indonesia dominated by multinational companies like Bayer, BISI, Dow, DuPont, Syngenta. However, Indonesia has the holding company, which is Pupuk Indonesia Holding Company. Pupuk, which translates to fertilizers, is Asia's largest fertilizers producers with 15 factories, about 13.7 million tons per year. And 2.5 million tons of it this year is subsidized to all 34 provinces in Indonesia, and about 8.42 million tons of fertilizers said to be national fertilizers reserves to sustain agricultural needs amidst COVID-19 pandemic. And now the third industry is Indonesia's mining industry. Now, the GDP contribution in the first quarter is $18.2 billion, but unfortunately decreased to $15.8 billion, and the GDP contribution of 2019-2020 is $18.7 billion, about 7% of Indonesia's GDP. Now, Indonesia's mining industry is mainly identified as upstream industry and mainly consists of three products: oil, gas, and coal. The first is oil industry. In 2004, Indonesia has become net in oil importer. Until now, it is because lack of investments in exploration, only $122,000 invested, but huge investment in exploitation, about $10.92 billion. And mining industry has market valuation of $10.9 billion, and Indonesia is the 24th of world top oil producing countries. Indonesia once joined OPEC, Organizations of Petroleum Exporting Countries, since 1962, but left in 2008 because Indonesia has become importer, thereby against the organization statute, and then rejoined back in 2014, only to left again in 2016 because OPEC decided to have a policy of limiting Indonesia's production capacity of oil to only 37,000 barrels per day. And now let's compare oil with the gas production. You can see here from the graph that the oil industry in Indonesia built up since 1966 and peaked in 1977 and then plateaued all the way to 1995 and then suddenly declined. And you can see that with the gas production here, it overtook the production of oil and it's peaked in 2010, the gas production. And it's right now actually dominated by gas. In the past, it's dominated by oil. And it's proven that Indonesia's oil reserves only 3.6 billion barrels left, approximated only 11 years of stocks, unless Indonesia wants to find new oil wells to do some exploration. And now the second and third is gas and coal industry. Indonesia has the 13th world largest reserves of 96 trillion cubic foot, approximated 66 years of stocks, and Indonesia is the 7th world largest gas exporter. And you see that production of gas peaked in 2010. Exactly in 2010, Indonesia is the net gas exporter with more than 1 million cubic foot of export. And in the gas production percentage is 34% of it for export, 12.78% for power plant, 36.19% for industrial usage, and 70% for others like residential and then commercial usage. And now coal industry, the final is that Indonesia's coal production in the dark green line, now Indonesia's production in the light green, overwhelmingly larger than Indonesia's coal consumption. And it's proven that Indonesia is the 6th world largest coal reserves of 453 trillion cubic foot, about 243 years of stocks. And Indonesia has the 5th world largest producer, produce about 406.6 million tons and 80% of coal production exported. And that's it, the three industry that is part of the Indonesian chemical industry. Thank you all for listening to my presentation. Hope we all have a good day.